Hello, everybody. This is Serpent Stinger here, and today I'm going to be doing a review about the Iceblade Sorcerer Episode 1. And I have all of my notes right here on my handy dandy little iPad. So if you see me glance down, it's because I'm looking at my notes to refresh myself on what we are going to be discussing. So, for anybody that's new, and since this is my first video doing this, I'm going to break down what exactly it is, how my review process is going to go. So I used to do this on my Twitch channel a lot, and I'm probably going to start doing it again here soon. So this is what we've got. I'm going to break down the overall episode, how I feel about it, kind of the things that happened in it that I thought were kind of funny. Then I'm going to talk about the world building and some of the interesting notes that I picked up in the world building throughout the episode. And then we're going to discuss my overall thoughts on how it's animated and the design of the series of the anime so far. So, without further ado, let's get this started. So the Iceblade Sorcerer seems to be following your stereotypical fantasy setting with a school of magic that's reserved to like high nobility or people that descend from magic users. Then you have your protagonist, a new student who is a ordinary in this world is what they call it, but essentially a commoner, somebody that has nothing to do with and has not come from magic before. So we follow the protagonist, Ray White, as he goes through his first day. And there's already a little bit of some interesting notes to bring up that he seems to be a very mature character. From what I can tell, it looks like they seem to be in high school, maybe young college years. It's hard to tell off the first episode. The Ray White, as we've seen, our protagonist, he shows up, stops in the front of the academy from what I think to be some sort of reference to the flashback that we saw in the very beginning of the episode. He stops, somebody bumps into him from behind. He reaches over to make sure that they're okay and is like holding their hand. And once they find out who he is, they have this shocked reaction and like this visceral reaction of like how disgusting it was to touch his hand. So then that shows us nobility isn't exactly happy with commoners or the ordinary in this case. There seems to be some discrimination there. Then obviously we run into our obligatory like four bully characters with the big bully at the front that winds up getting their butt kicked later in the first episode. Uh then our what I'm going to say is the main heroine of the series, I'm assuming, Miss Rose. I cannot, I'm not good at pronouncing her first name, but I believe it's Amelia Rose, Amelie, or something along those lines. She shows up, basically chases the bullies off before the protagonist can do anything. Also, he seems to not be the type to do anything outside of a regulated system. Then they talk for a little bit. We get a little bit of a backstory. Apparently, she's from like one of the big families, one of the three main noble families outside of the royal family, the Rose family. We get to class. The professor in the class then talks about obviously the magic system mainly. And the main thing to really take out of that is one, how the magic system works, and the sorcerers, the rankings. And obviously, as we're getting told about the rankings, it's very much alluded to that the protagonist is the Iceblade Sorcerer, one of the seven strongest and most important sorcerers in the world. Then we go through class. He doesn't seem to do anything particularly impressive. This seems to be kind of following your like chrome shelled Regios plot line, where like the protagonist is somebody very important, but they're either hiding it or their particular set of skills is so niche that even though that they were really well known originally, they knew them based off of those skills. So long as they're not using them, they won't be noticed. We get told, obviously, that out of the seven original members, the seven strongest sorcerers, that we only know of three of them: Spellbinder, the Blaze Sorcerer, and the Iceblade Sorcerer. And two of them we know the location of. The Iceblade Sorcerer disappeared. Then Bully gets more agitated that the Ordinary is still completely ordinary, and we get into the Ray White winds up going back to his dorm, basically, is what I'm trying to say. He goes back to his dorm, and we get Muscle Bro moment. So they set up this other guy to make you think that it's like, oh no, his roommate's going to be a jerk. Nope. Roommate's just like, I don't care if you can't use magic. I don't care about any of this other crap. I don't care if you're ordinary. All I want to know is, do you got muscles though? And then they have a bro moment. And then the next day happens. We get introduced to more cast members, such as the Cleveland girl with pigtails. We have a blue-haired elf. We have obviously the principal. We're basically just kind of getting introduced to our cast. And once he goes back to the school, we find out that he has to have a conversation with the principal before he can continue his day. Where we find out that he was in the military, which was already referenced on some flashbacks that were happening in the beginning. Besides that, he goes to his class. His first class of that day is swordsmanship training, and let's just be honest, he fights the bully and he kicks the bully's ass. Like, eh, we all were expecting it. The interesting beats, the interesting beats that I kind of want to hit on for the actual story is just kind of like the flow is very common for magical school anime styles. One of the things that I will note is that I'm pretty sure Iceblade Sorcerer is a manhwa that's been adapted to anime. And if that is correct, then you can really tell that it is a manhwa because it's very much a fast pace in the beginning. Like, it feels like things are going a little bit too fast. But we'll see how it continues through the next episodes. The most interesting thing for the story, besides the pacing and just kind of being very similar, I guess you could say, to other magical schools, is the fact that they don't even try to hide that he's the Iceblade Sorcerer. Right at the end of the first episode, they just straight up say that he's the Iceblade Sorcerer. So, yet again, it feels like it's a little fast, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that they're doing that because it doesn't feel like that it doesn't feel like they're expecting the watcher to be dumb. Now let's get into the part that I am most excited to talk about: the magic system. So, one of my favorite things to do when it comes to seeing new shows and shows that have like multiple takes on the same concept, like magical schools, military schools, that kind of thing, is to break down the power systems, because that's the thing that really winds up making them unique, is the power systems and the characters. Because otherwise, it's usually some form of copy and paste of the same concept. And with this one, the first thing that kind of came to my mind is that the power system reminds me a lot of Full Metal Alchemist, where Full Metal Alchemist is very much talking about the matters of life and different states of matter, and all about you manipulating and changing them for combat wise. We're getting a magic version of that. It's not so much you can't. It's not so much sticking to the laws of science where you can't where items cannot be created out of nothing. They are technically created out of nothing. They're created out of like Prima something. I can't pronounce it, but essentially what I'm going to call mana. They use this mana to basically code it. Like, I guess you could say like the mana's like this blank slate. Then they code it like they're coding a video game or a website or a program to do concepts, effects, all the intricates are basically just coding done in your head. Then it gets activated into the world. And we have some references to some other forms of coding, it seems like, such as antimatter magic. That seems to not exist, but I'm going to guess it does, in fact, exist. Uh, So all in total, I think the magic system sounds super complicated, but I like it. I also like the fact that they clarify that there are four states of matter, being obviously the solids, liquids, gases, plasma, and in their cases, they say anything that doesn't fall inside of those four cases of matter is called a phenomenon, I believe is how it was said. Uh, so I'm curious to see what a phenomenon is, but so far we've seen solids, liquids, and gases. We weren't really well, we were shown plasma, but I'm interested to see the applications of each of these states of matter when it comes to other characters besides the teacher. Because obviously we were demonstrated them just for the viewer's sake, but so far we've only really seen solids used in any application so far. Besides that, we got introduced to obviously the noble families. It looks like the big noble families don't really have a hatred for the ordinaries. Besides that, there's not really much to break down on the nobility or the world building too much yet because we haven't really seen too much of it. They talked about something like called the Far East War, which apparently the protagonist was a part of. Same thing with the principal. They seem to be all part of one squad. We saw some references to one of the members, possibly two of them dying. Like, there's not really much to discuss there, but I am really excited to see where this goes. My only gripe with the first episode, besides the pacing so far, is the animation for the first fight. He stepped to the side to avoid a blow in swordsmanship class. Let the sword like scrape down his sword, his wooden sword, and then the second form of combat with it was supposedly supposed to be a wooden sword and a wooden sword meeting in a thrust attack, and the bully's wooden sword shattering. It wasn't really animated though. It was like, if I'll be honest, it kind of reminds me of like Records of Ragnarok's first season, where a lot of the scenes were just a play-by-play of the manga. So like, I don't know how I'm feeling about the fight animation. I'll have to wait until we get a more important fight scene, I'm guessing, to see actual animation. But it left some it left some bits for me to be desired. It left some bits to be desired, in my opinion. But besides that, the only other thing I can think of for from this first wrap up of the first episode is that I'm very curious where we're going, like what the plot of this is. Like, obviously it's his school life after he was a part of a military, but like why is this important for us to see? But anyways, this is more of like a bit of a rant and ramble review about the first episode. This is quite literally maybe 10, 15 minutes after I watched the first episode. I will be doing a more cohesive review once the first season's fully out and I've watched all episodes. But you can expect me to be doing more content like this in the future with multiple different animes, perhaps even mangas as well, but I'll probably be doing like arcs for mangas or like the first 10 chapters or every 10 chapters, things like that. But besides that, I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you in episode 2.